Now, in this report, it's called the Bible Part 2. There's an intro here. Each chart is continued on the next chart, and there's 1 to 15. Child sacrifices were not told by the Jews or the Christians. The world don't know about it. 3. There's evidence of giants hidden by the Masons and Illuminati secret society cartel that control all religions, including Judaism and the Christian religions. Now, if you Google that, you're going to find there's literally tens of thousands of these giants from 9 feet up to 18 feet tall. They're dug up all over America, all over Europe, and all over Asia. And it's worthwhile that you have a look at what they have hidden from you. They didn't want you to know about this, because if you did know it, you would poo-hoo. Not only would you poo-hoo their evolution theory, they have thrown out God across the world. They've thrown out the flood, and they've thrown out anything to do with creation. Now, in this chart C, Yahweh knows that there would be evil in the last days. And Yahweh worded to the prophets, and in particular Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel, he worded the writings in such a way by intermixing his blessings and his curses to destroy wicked Israel in many of the same chapters and texts, deluding the old rejected Israel people to think they were still his chosen people. They have been continuously thrown out of countries and are continuously under the curse to be destroyed over the last 2,700 years by the decree of Yahweh. Their Talmud and oral law angered Yahweh. Now, I've given you several reports to prove this to you. But there's something that I have given to you and you probably haven't realized. Yahweh selects a new group from the entire earth to retain the name Israel, which will be the redeemed in the last days. Now let's have a look at chart 1. Read it with me. By virtue of the corruption of the human genome, by cohabitation of the divine male entities with human women, that's all given to you in Genesis 6, there's a race of giants were produced. These have been hidden by the secret society, Masons, Illuminati cartel. Why? Well, as I just explained to you, they wanted to give you a lot of box of lies concerning. They've told the world that God doesn't exist. Now, what came through the bloodlines? Shem, Ham, and Japheth after the flood. Now, maybe it's not from the men, but I do believe it's from the mothers. You could go to Genesis 6. Now, it came about when men began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God, offsprings of angels, a number of early sources refer to the sons of heaven as angel. Let's continue on the next one. Continuing now on chart 2. They saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whoever they chose. Then Yahweh said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he is also is flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. And they were the mighty men who were old, men of renown. Now we'll go to chart 3. Rashi and Nachmanides follow this same theory. Philo of the Biblical Antiquities, 1 to 3, may also imply that the sons of God were human. Consequently, most Jewish commentaries and translations describe the Nephilim as being from the offspring of sons of nobles, rather than from sons of God or sons of angels. More info you can get from the Chabad. Item 2, other areas of giants that were resident were at Bashan, that's northeast of Galilee, and the land surrounding the valley of Hinnom, that's east side of Jerusalem. Now the kingdom of Og, an Amorite king, he was a descendant of Canaan, which was Ham's son, and you get that in Joshua 9. Bashan was known as the land of the giants, or the Rephaim, in Deuteronomy 3. Now let's go to chart 4. Now if you go to the book of Joshua, you will get more information. And at that time came Joshua and cut off the Anakims from the mountains, from Hebron, from Debir, and from Anab, and from all of the mountains of Judah, and from all of the mountains of Israel. Joshua destroyed them utterly with their cities. There was none of the Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel, except in Gaza and Gath, in Ashdod. Now, if you look at Gaza, Gath, Ashdod, and Ekron and Ashkelon today, they are under fire. And it does tell you in my previous reports that they will be destroyed. Now, therefore, give me this mountain, whereof Yahweh spake in that day, for thou heardest in that day how the Anakim were there, and that the cities were great and fenced. If so be Yahweh will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out, as Yahweh said. Now let's go to chart 5. We're up to chart 5, read it with me. They killed sons and daughters as sacrifices to demons. Now I know you think this didn't happen or you think it's unbelievable, but it's true. Item 1. The land around the valley of Hinnom was known as the Valley of Giants, or the Rephaim. The Valley of Hinnom was used as a place for worshippers in Judah to burn their own children alive as sacrifices to demons, the idols of Moloch and Baal. Now there's one section of the Hinnom Valley was called Tophet, and there you have the spelling, where the children were slaughtered, and that's in 2 Kings 23. Now Og is one of the remnants of these giants, whose casket measured 18 feet by 8 feet. That's if you're using the Jewish cubit measurement. Now let's go to continue on chart 6. Now we're up to chart 6. Make a note up the top. The Masons, the Illuminati, believe they are the true bloodline out of Genesis 6. Okay, item 1. Moses and the Israelites cast the remnant of these giants out of Bashan. You get that in Numbers 32, Deuteronomy 3, and Joshua 12. If the Anakim Rephaim were allowed to take on human form and procreate back then, we have to ask the question, were they totally wiped out? Because in Joshua 11, it tells us some of them still remained. Is this still a genetic or race of people amongst us which we are unaware? Is this why the Illuminati Masons emphatically cohabit with what they claim as pure blood with the right to rule the earth? They also believe they will be immortal, travelling to the stars. Now, I've given you several reports that give you the evidence to prove that with their agreement, which you can get on the web in many places. Now, these giants worship Lucifer, the same as what the Masons and the Illuminati worship today. Now, this is continued on chart 7. And you would have got in my previous reports that the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, was written up about 250 BC. The Jews had, by 250 BC, rewritten the Torah, inserting many fake texts that alleged that Yahweh gave direct instructions to Moses on how to kill sacrificial animals. Now, I've given you a report on that, and I urge you to go back to it. Of course, this is refuted by Yahweh in Jeremiah 7. And he says, and they added the Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, which was not ordained by Yahweh. The Jews in Jerusalem used a Jerusalem Hebrew text, the so-called infallible Masoretic text, which has altered and deleted the name of Yahweh. The name of Yahweh as found in the Tetragrammaton. In its place, they have dastardly substituted Adonai, or Lord, and this has allowed the public to think that it's referring to Jesus. No, it's not. We also know that Jewish leaders put a ban on using the name Yahweh. His true name is approximately, this was in 300 BC. Yahweh had taken his name out of their brain, out of their head, and he banned them from speaking it. And I've given you a report on that. So that's in Jeremiah 44. Now in chart 8, it's safe to assume that the Hebrew Jerusalem text, which became the Masoretic hand-down text, showing all the times where Yahweh's name was deleted 7,000 times, and thus dishonoring Yahweh, the living creator God, actually breaching the first 3 commandments. Judaism today still uses another dastard name, Hashem. Christian Bibles sadly use the Old Testament Masoretic as a base source. Item 2. When the Masoretic vowel points are used with Yahweh, it comes out as Jehovah, and that's promoted by the JWs, which is false. The Masoretic vowel pointing, many scholars assert that it was borrowed by the Masoretic from Syriac and the Arabic Muslim influences of the Middle Ages. Bibles were finally printed with this in them in the 15th century. And there's more details if you go to that rabbi's name on the web. Now on chart 9, there's a bit of an example here of the corrupted text. On that day there shall be 5 cities in the land of Egypt, speaking the language of Canaan, and swearing by Yahweh of hosts, and one shall be called the city of righteousness. However, in the 3rd century BCE, the Masoretic text, the phrase was changed to city of righteousness, was changed to the city of the sun, and in some versions, the city of destruction. That's in Isaiah 19:18. History is very clear that from Ezra, the scribe, 400 BC, to Rabbi Akiva, 100 CE, and the men of the Great Assembly, the Sanhedrin, along with the high priest of Israel, all gave their approval to the manuscripts that became the Septuagint text. When reading your Bibles, I urge you, remember, where you see Lord, L-O-R-D, that has replaced Yahweh's name. Now in chart 10, I'll keep reading for you. However, not one of these men were faithful servants of Yahweh. Remember, I've given you many reports on this. As from 721 BC, they were thrown out by Yahweh. As from 586, they were thrown out by Yahweh. And they were not faithful people. In fact, they were under his decree to be annihilated. They were not under Yahweh's protection. Now, Rabbi Akiva and the entire minyan, they were burnt at the stake by Rome, and over 500,000 were killed when they were returning from Babylon. By the time of the advent of the papacy, and Constantine, 325 Common Era, the canon had been set, and according to the Jewish tradition, and later adopted by Christianity, allegedly the Torah was dictated to Moses by God, That is false. It's a false belief, and it's based on the narrative first recorded in the Mishnah. That's 100 BC, between there and 100 CE. The Mishnah being the first time that orally transmitted traditions were put into writing, that's their oral law, and it's included in the Talmud. Now make a note of this, chart 11. First of all, over 50% of the Jews did not return to Jerusalem. They remained in Persia and Babylonia region, in other words, in Iran today and Syria today. Many Jews, including 50% of the Israel Jews, they believed these lies, that the Torah was revealed to Moses by God. The 8th principle of the 13 principles of faith, that was established by the Jewish sage Maimonides, states, the Torah that we have today is the one that was dictated to Moses by God. Item 2. However, Yahweh said in refuting the practice of child sacrifice, killing your sons and daughters as a sacrifice, Yahweh's words, he did not command it, and it did not come into his mind. Yahweh states his contempt for child sacrifice. So you've got to ask the question, who put the narrative in the book of Genesis that God told Abraham to kill his son as a sacrifice? That is a lie. And you can tell that's a lie quite easily, because Yahweh's word by Yahweh himself, it did not come into his mind. Now have a look at this with me. In the Hebrew Bible, Tophet was a location in Jerusalem in the valley of Hinnom, where worshippers influenced by the Canaanite pantheon sacrificed their sons and daughters to the demon gods Moloch and Baal by burning them alive. The children were slaughtered. That tells you in 2 Kings 23. The name Tophet is derived from either or both the Hebrew word toph, meaning a drum. Now, because the cries of these poor children being sacrificed by the priest of Moloch, the demons, were masked. Their cries were masked by the sound of the beating on drums and the tambourine. Now, Jews will deny this today, but I'm showing you the evidence, and the evidence in the Tanakh is irrefutable. And if you go through the last 5 or 6 of my reports that I've published to you, you will get more information that proves to you these facts are irrefutable. Now in this chart, read the headline. Is it any wonder that Israel was consequently rejected by Yahweh and to be annihilated by Yahweh? A Talmud medieval Jewish sage, he argued that God always held sacrifices inferior to prayer and philosophical meditation. This dastard, amazing statement comes from one of the Jewish leaders that they take a lot of note from. Quote, but the custom which was in those days general among men, and the general mode of worship in which the Israelites were brought up, consisted in sacrificing animals. I've given you several reports that prove that Yahweh, the Creator God, asked for absolutely no sacrifice animals for the 40 years that he brought them out of Egypt. He goes on to say, it was in accordance with the wisdom of the plan of God. You got that? How would he be able to do that? That God did not command us to give up or to discontinue all these manners of service. For to obey such a commandment would have been contrary to the nature of man. It was because of the nature of man that Yahweh wanted them separated from all of the nations around them, who generally cleave to that which he is used to. It would in those days have made the same impression as a prophet would make at a present time. And he was in the 12th century. Chart 14. And this is continued from chart 13. Now, if he called us to service of God and told us in his name that we should not pray to God, nor fast, nor seek his help in the time of trouble, that we should serve him in thought and not by any action. Now, you've got the source there from when Maimonides printed that, and that's held very dear by the Jewish people today. Item 2, in Tertullian's record, history records on about 200 CE, states that although the Talmud Sanhedrin priests who sacrificed children had been executed on the cross by the Roman procurator, it did not stop these holy crimes. Subsequently, and you can get this if you Google it, Jews were banished from Jerusalem. Now, chart 15. Now, when I was going through the research to get all this information, I'm not joking, I couldn't stop crying. Some of these sources suggest that the babies were roasted to death on a heated bronze statue. And according to Diodorus Siculus, quote, there was in their city a bronze image, a demon, Cronus, extending its hands, palms up, and sloping towards the ground, so that each of the children, when placed thereon, rolled down and fell into a sort of gaping pit filled with fire. They placed their children alive in the arms of a bronze statue of the Lady Tanit. The hand of the statue extended over a brazier, into which the child fell once the flames had caused the limbs to contract and its mouth to open. And the child was alive and conscious when burnt. Philo tells you in his historical writings, he specified that the sacrifice of the child was the child best loved. Now, I don't know if you want to, but if you want to Google for more information, you too will cry. And this is what the Jews were doing. Now, as I wind up this report, I'm going to just put this particular chart back up on your screen, together with another one of the charts, just to refresh your mind about who wrote the Bible in part 1. And when you read the items in this and you follow it in your book, and when you look at what they did and how they did it, and what's going to happen by the evil people today, you're going to see how they have built up a terrible lie, and they've built up a lie on a lie on a lie, and the whole world has been duped and deceived for 2,000 odd years. There's one more thing that I'll make mention while you're reading this and you're looking at it. The story that they've given the world on the Holocaust, where they allegedly tell you that 6 million were killed in the gas chambers. That is another lie. And there's a lot of people that have gone to jail because they have made it a crime to be a Holocaust denier. It's the same as the Twin Towers. If you speak out against that, which is another lie, it was perpetrated by the government, by themselves. But you're not allowed to tell the world about that. Look, the lies and the deceit that has been gone on to the world today is absolutely shocking.